If you are a business that works with key accounts over very long periods of time, and you're doing a lot of business with a small number of accounts, this could be super helpful because you now have a dedicated place to keep track of that business's competitors, to really analyze strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and help them understand what's going on, which really helps you sell the right products and services that are going to be the most helpful to those key accounts.
This podcast is brought to you by Fast Slow Motion, a team of expert consultants that have helped hundreds of growing businesses build scalable systems on the HubSpot and Salesforce platforms. To learn more, visit fastslowmotion.com. Welcome to the Fast Slow Motion podcast, where we teach you how to build a business you love while enjoying your life. I'm your host, Sam Donaghey, and in today's episode, we're going to be exploring the latest Salesforce Winter 25 release. And I'm really excited to be joined today by Zack, a Senior Solutions Architect at Fast Slow Motion. Zack, welcome to the show.
Sam, good to be here. Thanks for having me back.
Super excited today, Zack, to hear all about the specific features and updates in the Winter 25 release. But first, I'd love to talk to you about some of the big trends that you're seeing with Salesforce right now. So when you and I spoke about the release a few days ago, you did mention that there's a few themes that you're seeing. So can you tell us about those?
Absolutely. So really kind of identified 4 or 5 sort of themes based on what are we seeing release after release after release, right? So first is there's continued prioritization of Flow. So Flow is continuing to get a ton of updates over time. And not only is it becoming more powerful, but it's becoming easier to use, which is both, I think, a good thing and a bad thing. And we can kind of talk about what that means later. But a lot of focus on Flow and making things better and easier to use. A second is setup in general. So we're seeing a trend towards modernizing the backend setup of Salesforce. So things like Lightning interface, modern UI, the ability to do things like inline edit users. That's an exciting update coming in this release as well. Third, continued prioritization of user ideas. So Salesforce is continuing to look at the idea exchange and pull ideas from there and actually create features that are being requested by the community. Love to see that. Fourth, data cloud and AI continues to be an absolutely massive focus for Salesforce, especially with Dreamforce going on right now, finding out about new things like Agentforce and sort of the evolution of AI on the platform. Obviously, huge focus is going to be automating things using autonomous agents, but then also the importance of data and having a unified platform with Data Cloud to harmonize that data and make sure that you're getting good results because your AI is only as good as your data. So that's another sort of huge theme going on. And then finally, we're seeing Salesforce offering new things to compete with competitors like HubSpot. So things like Pro Suite, being able to package up some really core features of Salesforce in a way that is accessible and affordable for small businesses, but allows them to access really powerful features of the platform. We're definitely seeing some things like that. And then in addition to that, features from Pro Suite are also coming to most enterprise customers with something called Salesforce Foundations, which I'm excited to chat about that as well.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm guessing that some of those themes are going to be reflected in this release. So let's dig into it. What are some of the features and updates that our listeners really need to know about?
Well, of course, I'm going to talk about Flow because I love Flow. So there's definitely some exciting updates coming to Flow. Additionally, we're continuing the enhancement of user management and permissions on the back end. So we'll talk about some of the updates coming there. The updates to Lightning are continuing to be prioritized. And so we're seeing some really cool updates coming to the front end and your Lightning pages and how you can design those pages. And then there's a cool little feature coming called account planning, which is not yet in the release. It's coming later in October, but I think a lot of businesses that track competitors and they're trying to have multiple sales cycles with a single customer, this is really going to help track that customer and make sure that they're staying on top of things to ensure that they're being taken care of in the best.
Well, look, let's start by unpacking all the Flow updates. They sound pretty exciting.
Absolutely. I'll start with some of the simpler ones. So generally speaking, they're adding some more context around Flow within the Flow Builder. So what do I mean by that? There's a new errors and warnings panel that appears. So when you're building a flow and something's not right, it used to be it just pop up in kind of like a little yellow warning sign and you'd have to click into it to see it. Well, there's now a dedicated panel that lists out any errors that are going to be happening in the flow. It makes it a lot easier to read, a little bit more accessible if you're new to Flow. And then the other thing, similarly, there's a new Flow tips feature. And what's really nice about this is if you're doing something that is not wrong from a configuration perspective, so it's allowable, right? It's something that you can technically do, but it's not best practice because it might violate Salesforce limits or it may lead to something breaking when you're operating at scale. Salesforce will now surface some warnings, some soft warnings, let's call it, right? So it's you're not designing something that's broken, but it could break later on if you're not careful. So a classic example of that is if you have a loop and you put either a get element, you're doing sockle inside of the loop, or you have a creator update element inside of a loop that's DML inside of a loop. That's a classic, hey, don't do that because you could hit those Salesforce limits. You'll now be warned that you shouldn't put DML in a loop, and it'll tell you why. And so just some nice little enhancements there to make it easier for perhaps some new users to Flow or new users to develop.
And were people saying that in the ecosystem, there were some issues that were coming up when people were using flows and building flows and they were making some mistakes, and this is the reason that Salesforce has updated this now?
Yeah, and one of the interesting things about this is, the continued prioritization of Flow, bringing Flow to everyone is both an amazing thing because it's democratizing the ability to go in and create powerful automations on the Salesforce platform without having to be someone who codes. So I'm not going to use the word developer because if you're creating Flow, you are doing development. However, you're not writing lines of code, right? So that's really powerful, but it also comes with risks because if you give tools that have the power that Flow does, if you're a newer user, you are more likely to make mistakes, not because you're bad at it, but because you just don't know what you don't know, right? And so things like putting DML inside of a loop, unless you have come across that or you have a development or you have a background in development or you have someone who's mentoring you to kind of walk through that, you may not know that that's a problem. And so, yes, this is really kind of trying to surface some of those things before they happen. Now, of course, the alternative argument there is, should we be enabling newer users or non-developers to create things as powerful as Flow on the platform? And that's sort of a whole nother conversation that's happening, which is it good that this is happening in production? So like right now, you can still build and activate flows in production. Well, with Apex, you can't do that. You have to build your Apex in a sandbox. You have to create test classes, and then you have to deploy that to production. So you have some built-in protection. Flow doesn't have those protections. And so if you're a new user and you're building a Flow in production, well, it could be disastrous, right? And so what'll be interesting is to see if any other additional guardrails will be put in place in the future. But for now, you can still build those flows in production. I don't recommend that. If you're listening, build your flows in a sandbox, test it in a sandbox. But so some cool features with just making it more accessible. And then of course, you can now view limits for scheduled flows and your debug details. Einstein can help you build flow formulas now. But the really important updates that all the technical users are going to be interested in is the transform element now supports almost any data type. So beforehand, if you were going to use transform, you would have to take a source collection and then translate that to another source collection or a record collection. And so now you have the ability to transform data into primitive data types and other types of data. So an example that I use here is, let's say you are wanting to aggregate the sum of all the related opportunities on an account, right? Now, yes, you can do this with a roll-up field, but let's say you can't and you want to do this through Flow. The old way to do this would be take that account, go and retrieve all the opportunities related to that account, loop through them, and then for each time you loop through it, find that amount and add it to a variable, right? So you're going through each iteration, each opportunity, and then you're performing an addition operation to add it to a variable, right? Nothing wrong with that. But now with the transform element, I can just say, take this collection of opportunities, take the amount from that collection, sum it together, and put it into this other variable. And so it really makes it a lot simpler and more powerful because honestly, there's very little need for loops anymore. I'm not willing to say that you aren't going to need loops anymore. You still may need loops in some situations, but for things like adding multiple records to a collection, performing math operations, transforming things into different data types, you can do all that with the transform element. So, and it's more efficient. than using Loop. So really great updates there. I'm very excited about that. Yeah, my colleague Brad, that's probably his favorite update. So he's a big evangelist for the transform element.
Absolutely love that. Hey, going back to Einstein as well, I find it interesting that now Einstein can help build flow formulas and that sort of thing. Like, how accurate are these flow formulas that Einstein can help build? And is it important to have somebody that understands the flows that are being formulated to be there to see them?
Absolutely. So what I would say is think about AI as a tool in your toolkit, right? It is not a developer on its own.
Right.
So it's super helpful. It can create some great formulas and flows, but it's not foolproof. And I don't think we should trust it 100%, right? It's always best to have someone who knows how to do this, who has experience, that can look over Einstein's shoulder, so to speak, and check the code and make sure it's going to work well. Now, what I will say is it's implemented very well, right? It's powerful. It can generate some really great formulas. You can even generate flows with Einstein now, right? So it is really good, but it's always, I think, going to continue to be best practice to always have a human in the loop, check to make sure that the code is written well. And so that's really important. It's really important to make sure that you've got someone that knows.
Was there anything else that you wanted to cover in Flow?
Yeah. Two or three quick things. I won't go into too many details. Repeater element, it's now generally available, and it supports things like pre-populating records, which beforehand it was only able to create new records, but now you can pre-populate that data, update the data. You can take it, delete data from there if you want to. So that's really exciting. The action button is now generally available as well. So that is exiting beta and is available in production orgs with this new release. And then if you are on Unlimited Edition, then you now can send up to 150 emails within the send email action, which is massive because beforehand you were limited to 5. Wow. So now that goes from 5 to 150, which is incredible. The downside is it's not available for Enterprise Edition or Professional Edition. It's only going to be on UE, and so if you have UE, congrats, 150 recipients now.
Okay, awesome. So let's move on to the next set of features you mentioned, which I know is going to be super popular with Salesforce admins, and that's going to be user management and setup.
Yeah, so really we've got a great continuation of the previous release where we're focusing on the backend setup, user management, permissions, making all that easier. I think what most admins will be most excited about is a modern list view for users that not only does it remove the classic UI, but it also supports inline editing. So you'll be able to bulk edit users directly from that list view. Very exciting, big time saver. Another thing is continuing to update where permissions can be identified. And so they're adding the ability to go to an object and say, okay, well, where is this object being granted access and to? So you're getting some more buttons like the view summary button on user that's now coming to objects themselves. There's a user access summary page, which provides a consolidated view of user information and permissions, which is really nice. Yeah. And there's the access granted by button, which is coming. And that shows how a given permission has been granted to a user. So you no longer have to play that guessing game, find the needle in the haystack through the back end. It's just going to tell you where that permission is, right? So really exciting stuff. And then one very small thing that if you've been an admin for a while, you're going to appreciate when you create a new group now, there's a description field. So you can now provide a description for why this group exists. So kind of hard to believe that wasn't available before, but now it is. So we can go crazy adding descriptions on our new groups now.
Okay, then. So you mentioned that there's also going to be updates to Lightning UI and configuration as well. So can you tell us more about those?
There's some really great updates coming to the front end. So there's a new ability on the highlights panel. So when you go look at a record in Salesforce, let's say it's a contact, that big panel across the top that has the name of the person, maybe their email, their phone number, custom field like a status or something like that, that is now dynamic. So you can conditionally display fields that appear in that panel by defining criteria similar to what you can do with other components on your Lightning record page. So that's really nice to see. You can really highlight information at the right time for the right people. So that's a nice update. And then something else that's coming. Now this is on a delayed release, so this will not be available as soon as that release goes live in your org, but later on in October is the ability to use conditional formatting for fields on your Lightning record pages. So let's say You want to identify if a lead is hot or lukewarm or cold, and you want to identify that with color. And so if you want hot leads to be red, and if you want cold leads to be blue, whatever that is, you can now use conditional formatting based on the values so that your fields and the data really, and it's really obvious to your users what's going on the page. So that's something that I think people have been asking for a long time. And so it's nice to see that feature finally coming to the platform.
And they're finally getting it. So that's good news.
Yeah.
Well, Zach, look, I'm really excited to hear more about account planning. It sounds super interesting. And it's also something that at Fast Slow Motion we focus on as well. So first of all, can you explain what it is? And then can you tell us more about some new tools that Salesforce is introducing to help with this?
The general concept of account planning is working with your accounts to track what is valuable to them, to make sure that they're being well taken care of by your business, and determining what their goals are over time, right? So for us at Fast Slow Motion, for example, we work with a ton of clients and we really get to know their businesses. We're doing consulting, we're learning about their business processes. And so sometimes we have some visibility into what our clients might need, and maybe our clients aren't thinking about because we're working with their business every day and we're doing it from, a technical perspective on the sales platform. So for us, it really helps us to have those conversations with clients to say, well, what do you want to accomplish this year? What do you want to accomplish next year? What do you want to accomplish this quarter, right? What are some of those big overarching business goals? And it's not even necessarily specific to the work we're doing with Salesforce. It's just, tell us about your business and what you're hoping to do. What are your growth plans, right? So it really helps us to have those conversations to really be sort of a North Star to where we want to go in terms of customizing Salesforce, because we want to make sure that we're focusing on the right areas, right? So this new feature that Salesforce is adding, it's called account planning. And this is another one of those delayed releases. So it may not be available as soon as it comes live, but look for it in October. But this is going to bring some extra tracking capabilities to your account pages. And so it's going to surface some key data on your accounts, such as aggregate opportunity information. It will just surface it in these nice graphs across the top to show you things like lost opportunity amounts, won amounts, everything that's in that open pipeline. It will allow you to track some of the revenue that's been realized, assuming that you're tracking that in your org. But what's also interesting is it has the ability to track competitors, and you can log things like a SWOT analysis on that record. And so this may not be useful for everyone. I can't imagine everyone's going to, use the SWOT analysis. But if you are a business that works with key accounts over very long periods of time, and you're doing a lot of business with a small number of accounts, this could be super helpful because you now have a dedicated place keep track of that business's competitors to really analyze strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats and help them understand what's going on, which really helps you sell the right products and services that are going to be the most helpful to those key accounts, right? So that's really cool. It'll have other things like objective tracking and relationship mapping. That's honestly probably the coolest feature because relationship mapping was typically only available in things like Services Cloud or Health Cloud. And so you get some of that feature coming to everyone that has account planning. I think it'll really be a helpful tool. I can imagine some businesses using only some portions of it, other businesses using everything. So it really kind of depends on what you do and what industry you're in and how you do business. But it's a nice feature to have to really surface that data in an easy to access way, easy to read, and allow you to kind of be really intentional about how you work with your clients.
And is it going to be, is account planning going to be available as standard for all users?
As I understand it, it should be. Now, I don't know if there's limitations around Professional Edition versus Enterprise Edition, but generally speaking, I think it is coming to most orgs. But as always, check those release notes or check the developer documentation when it comes out to determine if there are any org limitations.
And it sounds like, having quality data in your CRM is going to be critical when it comes to account planning.
Yeah. And honestly, quality data in your CRM is only going to become more and more important. It's always been important, always. But with AI being integrated into our day-to-day lives, into how we do business, I mean, that train has left the station, right? Like that's right. Not coming back. It's only going to continue to become more important. So having a really good data strategy and making sure that your data is clean and accurate is only going to continue to be more and more important.
Well, look, let's zoom out a little bit. let's zoom back out from this release and look at the whole Salesforce platform. What would you say are some of the biggest business problems that we've been helping our clients to solve recently using Salesforce? Are there any trends there?
Yeah, big question, because we work with a lot of businesses that have a lot of different business models in a lot of different industries, right? But generally speaking, as a consulting company first, we really love to help businesses operationalize their business process.
Yeah.
Really thinking through different operations in your business. What are the processes that you use, or do you not have a process, right? So we can either help you operationalize a process that you have, or think about, well, maybe I don't have the ideal process here. So let's think about that together and then put that on the platform so that we're able to track it. Things like lead management, opportunity management, honing in on that handoff from marketing to sales and making sure that the marketing side of the house has a defined process, determining when to pass it over to sales and how that data gets to sales and who's assigned to it. And then what does the sales process look like from there? We do a lot of work helping to define that and make sure that the pipeline management process is set up on the platform and working well. We do a lot of email automation, so sending things out at the right time to the right people. I think really at a high level, our goal is to ensure consistent delivery of what you've sold. And so that process as a whole is how do we take your business process and make it consistent? So you're selling a product, you're selling a service. How do we make sure that your clients or customers are getting a consistent experience each time? So putting things on the Salesforce platform to help operationalize that and really help ensure that you get consistent results across your customer and client base.
Very interesting. I mean, were there any other common business problems that we've seen recently that you'd like to talk about?
I would say in the financial services industry, having an onboarding process for new clients or for existing accounts just to make sure nothing is missed. So, coming up with those onboarding processes when you get a new client. We do a lot of project management for services providers. And so sometimes we build this custom in Salesforce. Other times we leverage third-party tools. There's a tool called Milestones out there that allows us to go and just sort of install some packages and create some templates to do some project management. But that's a really common problem. A lot of times you operationalize your sales process. We see this with a lot of businesses. They've got an established sales process. But then once they sell it and they have to actually start tracking the delivery of what's been sold, sometimes it's tracked on the opportunity, which is really not a great place to do it because that's for the sales process, right?
Right.
You hit post-sales. That really needs to be tracked elsewhere, or they're not tracking it at all. And so it's a really big opportunity to go in and create some usually pretty simple processes on the platform just to track data about a project after it's been sold. So that is super common. We do that all the time. And then another thing that comes up a lot is if you're selling a product, order management is usually a big concern. And so we find that implementing processes and data models to help with order management is a common problem that we solve. And Salesforce already has some built-in tools to do that. You can track orders directly out of Salesforce, but some things where we may come in and customize it is, well, have an order, but also I need to invoice that customer. And so then we can come in and help say, all right, here's the order processes. This is when I have that order. This is when the order is being received. Now, how do we take it from being received to actually going and billing the customer? Did they pay when they ordered? Are they paying later? What are the terms of that? So there's a lot of variation there, but it's very common to have a company that's selling products want to go and create an order management process in Salesforce. And so that's something we see quite often.
And you can integrate with things like Stripe Now and all that kind of stuff as well, right? For order management.
Yeah. And a really cool update with Salesforce Foundations is that it's bringing the Pay Now function from ProSuite to anyone with Enterprise Edition and above. So it's going to be easier than ever to take payments in Salesforce. All you have to do is set up a Stripe account, and then you can create this and gather payments in Salesforce. So some exciting stuff coming up with Salesforce Foundation.
So, Zach, if I'm an admin or a business leader listening to this podcast, how do I learn more about all the features that you've spoken about today from Salesforce?
The main thing is check out their release notes. Salesforce, every release, they put out a pretty dense document that lists out everything in the release. I'm not saying go read through everything, but go and find the key things that are going to be important to your business. If you're on Sales Cloud, focus on some sales things, right? That's a really great resource. The other thing is Salesforce always puts out a release deck. So a slideshow that walks through all these releases. You can find that on Salesforce's website. And we'll also link to these resources in the show notes. And then they'll also have a thing called Release Readiness Live, which is essentially a webinar where Salesforce product owners walk through what's in this release. And it usually has the opportunity for people to ask questions. So keep in mind for any release coming down the road, always check the release notes, go to release readiness, check that out. That's really useful. The other thing that I always look at is Salesforce Bin, a phenomenal resource for all things Salesforce. They usually walk through sort of top 10 release features for admins, top 10 release features for developers. And so that's a really great resource that we'll link to as well. And then another thing is if you're wondering how you can take advantage of the new features in this release or any future release, Fast Slow Motion, we offer free health check. It's, totally commitment free. You don't have to come and be a client. We would love for you to, but what we'll do is we'll get on a call and we can walk through your org, help you find out if there's any inefficiencies there, make some recommendations, or if you have a problem and you just don't know where to go forward and work through it, we can hop on a call on this health check and kind of help you work through it. And so reach out to us. You can go to fastslowmotion.com/health check to request one. And we would love to help evaluate your org and make sure that you're building things in a scalable way.
Awesome. Hey, Zach, it's also really interesting to see Salesforce continue to grow through acquisitions. Salesforce has acquired 3 companies in 2024 alone. And you also mentioned some updates that have been shared at Dreamforce, which is going on right now as we're recording this episode. So what do we need to know about what Salesforce has been up to lately?
I think we're actually up to 4 acquisitions in 2024, which is kind of crazy. So yeah, we've got Spiff, which is an incentive compensation management tool. So I can see that being added to Sales Cloud and some of the features there coming very soon. PredictSpring is a point of sale software. So Salesforce just talked about this at Dreamforce. So if you are a company that does retail and you actually take payments at point of sale, I can assume that this is going to be integrated into the platform in a really powerful way. So, keep your eyes open and your ears open to what's going to go on there. Tinix is an AI voice agent software. So with all the announcements that we just heard at Dreamforce, Agentforce is the absolute primary focus of what's going on at Dreamforce. And they did some incredible demos where somebody called into a customer service line and an AI voice agent actually picked up the phone and took the request from the customer and got them the information they needed, or they processed a refund, or they gave them a reorder, whatever it is. So I can see this software, this acquisition really playing into these new features coming with Agentforce. There's a huge focus on unstructured data at Dreamforce right now. So think about audio, video, PDFs, documents where you don't actually have, field with defined data in it. It's unstructured, right? It's not necessarily categorized. So I think this will play a really big role in that. And then Own, it used to be called Own Backup, now called Own. Salesforce acquired them as well. And they're really the market leading Salesforce backup and restore tool. And so we can expect that some of the features and functionality from Own will begin to be integrated into the platform as well. I don't know how soon that will happen or what that will look like, but that's a really big upgrade for compliance and security and ensuring that you have backup plan when something goes wrong. And so seeing that be more integrated into the system, Salesforce already has a backup and restore tool, but I think the features from Own coming into Salesforce will really just augment what we already have. So I'm excited about that as well.
Fantastic. So anything from Dreamforce then that you want to talk about?
I could probably talk about it at length, but I'll just highlight a couple of things. So Agentforce is the big buzzword, right? Mark Benioff even said, why are we calling it Dreamforce? We might as well call it Agentforce. So this is really Salesforce's next evolution of the AI tools that they have on the platform. So if you were familiar with Einstein Copilot, agents are replacing Copilot. So right. Agents are really, and I'm not an expert at this, right? We're just sort of learning about this as it gets announced, but the way I understand it is these agents will be able to take user input utterances from users. So think about it like a chat bot, but it can also be voice, right? So we saw some demos where it was integrated with voice, but a user has a question about a product or anything like that. So it is a large language model where the user comes in, puts in their question, the model goes, processes what it is, uses your data. Everything's grounded on your data. So it's able to access things like your knowledge base, data in your CRM, works with Data Cloud. And so if you've got external sources hooked up into Data Cloud, it can pull from that as well. And it is able to go and find that information, uses something called retrieval augmented generation to where it can go and actually retrieve data from different sources at the right time to make the responses more accurate and better. So it's really pretty exciting. And one of the coolest things about it too is you don't have to be a technical expert to set this up. The setup process itself uses natural language. And so you go in and you just tell Salesforce, this is the topic I want this agent to address. This is the scope of what this agent can do. These are the guardrails that I want to put in place. So if somebody asks this, don't do it, right? Or here's how to redirect that. And even cooler is it has built-in testing capabilities to where you can run tests to validate if the response is correct or not so that you can tune your prompts better. And the actual testing process itself supports natural language. So you can tell it to generate its own set of tests. Very cool. So I think it's going to be really powerful. You know, as with anything, a really important quote that we had from Dreamforce is any AI conversation needs to be a business value conversation. So really, you really need to be thinking about it. If you're going to implement something like this, you got to tie it to business value. You know, it's not just let's get AI because AI is popular, right?
Yeah.
How can AI help your business get value? So that's really important, is to always be thinking about the business use cases there. Other thing from Dreamforce that I think is really exciting is called Salesforce Foundations. So if you have heard the words Pro Suite or Salesforce Starter or Salesforce Essentials, Pro Suite is essentially a package of all the best features of Salesforce. So you get some powerful Sales Cloud features, some powerful Service Cloud features. You get the ability to collect payments with Pay Now, which is a Commerce Cloud feature. And then you get some marketing features as well. And all of that, by the way, runs on Data Cloud, which is pretty amazing. That was only available if you purchased Pro Suite, right? Which is, you know, it's a cheaper edition. It doesn't cost as much as $100 per user per month. It's designed for small and growing businesses. The feature set's really great, right? So if you were on, let's say, Enterprise Edition, you don't get access to those features, right? Well, Salesforce is bringing that to everyone who is on an Enterprise Edition or above. And so what that's going to do is it's going to bring you some common Sales Cloud features, Service Cloud features, the Pay Now features, as well as marketing. That does also include Data Cloud. So there's some limitations around it. So you get some free credits for Data Cloud. And you also coming with Foundations is you're going to get access to an agent. Now, I don't know specifically you need to do that. There's some limits around how you can do that on this edition, because typically it requires having Einstein 1 licenses or Einstein for Sales, Einstein for Service, something like that. But I do know Foundations is coming with some level of agent support, which is really cool. This is a free upgrade available to anyone on Enterprise Edition and above. So today you can go and ask your AE to enable this. I believe new orgs will automatically have it enabled, but it's really cool. Like if you are just on Sales Cloud and you have a service need or a marketing need, you don't have to go and buy Service Cloud now, unless you want the full suite of services, right? If you just have some simple service needs, well, you can accomplish that now with Foundation. You don't necessarily need to go and purchase a full marketing cloud or account engagement SKU if you have some relatively simple marketing needs, because now there's a built-in marketing tool that comes with Foundation. Yes, you may outgrow it. You may have needs that are going to go beyond the 2,000 emails per month limit that comes with it. But if you're just starting something on your marketing side of things, it's a great option to test it out. And it gives you tools you didn't have before that were core to the platform. So I'm very excited about that. I think a lot of our clients will be excited about that as well. And if you're out there and you're on Enterprise Edition or higher, go talk to your AE and say, hey, I want Salesforce Foundations, and they'll get that enabled for you. It also comes with a pretty cool new user interface, some different colors and modern icons. And so if you just want to kind of refresh the look of your org, you can do it with that as well.
Zack, this has been an absolute masterclass. It's almost like it's Zack Force, your Fast Slow Motion's very own agent. And you're giving us all this information. I don't know where you store it all in that brain of yours, but it's been fantastic to hear from you and for you to unpack all the new features and updates from this winter release from Salesforce. Well, look, Zack, we also always like to wrap up each episode of our podcast with a quote. So do you have a favorite quote or a piece of wisdom that's guided you in your work with Salesforce and technology?
I studied entrepreneurship at Auburn University, and I had a fantastic professor. His name is Jim Corman. And the quote from him is, no decision is a decision, and it's usually the worst decision. If you're an entrepreneur or a small business and you've got analysis paralysis, it doesn't matter. Make a decision, right? It's going to be worse to not make a decision than it is to make the wrong decision. So, just keep moving.
Don't sit on the fence.
That's right. Exactly.
Love it. Zack, thank you so much. Well, look, that wraps up today's episode on the Salesforce Winter 25 release. A big thank you to Zack for sharing his insights with us. We hope our listeners found this discussion really valuable as you navigate the latest Salesforce updates. Remember to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform, or you can find archived episodes at fastslowmotion.com/podcast.